Grenfell fire experts condemn total failure of stay-put advice, saying total evacuation should have happened within 46 minutes of first 999 call rather than almost 2 hours. The stay-put advice to those living in Grenfell Tower during the deadly blaze which killed 72 people was a total failure, according to an expert witness. Dr. Barbara Lane, a chartered fire engineer who works for design consultancy Arup, added it took 1 hour and 11 minutes between when it became clear the safety advice had failed and when it officially changed to tell residents to leave. The advice from the emergency services was in place for almost 2 hours and was repeatedly told to those inside, ringing 999 for help. Dr. Lane's damning report said it was clear the stay-put advice had substantially failed after just 32 minutes and that it was unclear why people were not told to flee the blaze sooner. She added total evacuation should have happened 46 minutes after the fire was reported. She added black smoke had already appeared in the ground floor by this time and had reached the stairwells just 15 minutes later, meaning there was a need for the total evacuation of Grenfell Tower. Dr. Lane also found the cladding system on the outside of Grenfell Tower was so conducive to the spread of fire it did not support the stay-put policy. She also claimed that the key players involved in the 2016 refurbishment had not ascertained how the new cladding system would behave in a fire. Tests showed the materials forming the cladding system, individually and together, did not comply with the recommended fire performance set out in guidance for a building of that height, the report said. She wrote, "Additionally, I conclude that the entire system could not adequately resist the spread of fire over the walls having regard to height, use and position of the building. Specifically, the assembly failed adequately to resist the spread of fire to an extent that supported the required stay-put strategy for this high-rise residential building. There were multiple catastrophic fire spread routes created by the construction foreman construction detailing. The windows lacked fire-resisting cavity barriers and were surrounded by combustible material, meaning there was a disproportionately high probability of fire spreading to the cladding," she added. The report also claimed key players involved in the 2016 refurbishment were not aware of how the new cladding system would behave in a fire. Dr. Lane wrote, "I have found no evidence yet that any member of the design team or the construction ascertained the fire performance of the rain screen cladding system materials, nor understood how the assembly performed in fire. I have found no evidence that building control were either informed or understood how the assembly would perform in a fire. Neither the tenant management organization nor London Fire Brigade recorded how the cladding would respond to a fire in their risk assessments," she said. Poorly performing fire doors contributed significantly to the spread of smoke and fire to the lobbies, Dr. Lane found. She wrote in her report that this failure would have materially affected the ability or willingness of occupants to escape independently through this space to the stair. It would have also hindered the ability of firefighters to rescue many people on the tower's upper floors. In 2011, the tenant management organization, which ran the building, replaced 106 flat entrance fire doors. None of the doors on any of the 120 flats, including the 14 not replaced, were compliant with the fire test evidence relied upon at the time of installation, Dr. Lane found. These shortcomings would have had a number of consequences, including failure to prevent the spread of smoke and flame by leakage through gaps between the door leaf and door frame. Another failure of an unknown number of doors to self-close after an occupant escaped would have allowed immediate spread of fire and smoke. The lobbies could therefore not be used as a safe air environment by the fire service bridgehead, forcing it to remain below level 4 until 7:30 am. This greatly reduced the time available using breathing apparatus, and so the time available for rescue on the upper floors, and particularly above level 15. Firefighters may also have contributed to the spread of fire and smoke into the stairwell by leaving doors ajar as they fought the blaze, Dr. Lane found. She wrote, "I have identified the fact that the firefighting operations in response to the multi-story fire may have contributed to the failure of the stair fire doors to prevent fire and smoke spread. Current evidence indicates some of the stair doors were ajar as firefighting hoses were running from the stair into the lobby. However, I currently do not know the number of doors involved, nor which specific doors, nor for how long this opening may have occurred. I cannot yet conclude whether this made a significant contribution. In one case, a fire door to the stairwell was held open by a body, the report said. The expert's evidence also blamed the building's windows for allowing the fire to spread to the combustible cladding, which led to its rapid spread up the tower. She said the window frames were not protected with fire-resistant barriers but instead with combustible materials, allowing the blaze to expand unchecked. Another of her conclusions was that key bodies involved in the refurbishment of Grenfell Tower understood how the new cladding system would behave in a fire, a report has said. In the report, Dr. Lane said, "I have found no evidence yet that any member of the design team or the construction ascertained the fire performance of the rain screen cladding system materials, nor understood how the assembly performed in fire. I have found no evidence that building control were either informed or understood how the assembly would perform in a fire. Further, I have found no evidence that the tenant management organization risk assessment recorded the fire performance of the rain screen cladding system, nor have I found evidence that the LFB risk assessment recorded the fire performance of the rain screen cladding." Dr. Lane is a fellow at the Royal Academy of Engineering and also serves as a visiting professor at the University of Edinburgh. It has since emerged the policy is still in place in all the tower blocks close to the burnt-out remains of Grenfell Tower in North Kensington, West London. Warning signs insist that in the event of a fire, residents should initially be safe if they close their doors and windows. These signs are identical to the safety advice notices which were in the communal corridors in Grenfell. The policy was widely criticized at the Grenfell Tower inquiry last week by relatives of the victims. Paulus Tekel, whose 5-year-old son Isaac died in the blaze, told the public inquiry how neighbors urged the family to flee, but during numerous 999 calls over 2 hours he was repeatedly told to stay put until he was ordered abruptly to get his family out immediately. But by then the fire had spread, the building's only stairwell was filled with smoke and, in the chaos, Isaac became separated from his parents. Mr. Tekel, his wife and their 3-year-old son survived, but Isaac's remains were found on the 13th floor. He was one of the youngest victims of the blaze. Last night, residents of the towers around Grenfell described the decision to keep the disputed policy as madness and absolutely criminal.